Government of Goa Chief Secretary with effect from 25th January 2006. I must mention one small thing before you start your talk, sir. I remember my, I'd say mentor, Mr. Prakash Tandon, who was at Hindustan Steel of the old days before. He used to give a talk on economics, the economic growth and its connection to steel. And he always started his talk, in latter years was a bit repetitive, that South Korea, China and India were all making 10 million tons of steel at the same time. He gave this figure very repeatedly. And eventually South Korea was making 90 million tons. In those days, China was making a bit less than what is done today, but today that has just become 350 million tons or so, and India is making 37 million tons. I was really ashamed that India has got such a poor performance compared to these two. And when I came down here and had a chat with Mr. Randin of Goa, and he presented a paper at Rotterdam which showed that after the war, Japan rose in steel production at a fantastic rate when they were doing the economic reconstruction. And the rate of growth of China is not different from that of Japan. It's not something dramatic that has not been done before. It's something that's just a repetition of the Japanese story in this time and age. And according to that forecast of those statistics, he said India will follow another 20 years down the line to that same level as China. We shall drink to that when that happens. But to tell you more about it, I'll invite Mr. Singh.
I saw how that happened. Our finance minister, who is now PM, at his bidding, he was the one who took that hard line. And he told all ministers and secretaries, he said, no, this is not what you want. You have to totally open up. As you know, we were already down the dumps. Our, foreign exchange earnings were, we were virtually at the, it was basically living hand to mouth. So at that stage, we opened up. And sure enough, the first thing that went was licensing. Purely, we totally no license. Then gradually we moved on to this thing that the regime, the tax regime. We moved on to duty levels. Those were gradually brought down. I'll show you how things went. Then the pricing and the distribution controls went. In fact, briefly I'll tell you, I'll share with you. I was they call it the Development Commissioner of Iron and Steel. And at one stage, he used to sit in Calcutta and determine who will produce what and at what price the steel will be sold. Can you imagine? This was going on right till 91. And you could imagine the tremendous turbulence because people said, of course, the industry was sick. And of course, it had spawned a whole level of middlemen. But the point was, that the minute we dismantled this regime, there was a quantum jump. People, they were let loose. Induction furnaces started coming up all over. Electric arc furnaces started being set up. Large projects, of course, at that time, barring SAIL and Tata Steel, as you know, they weren't really, SAIL at that time was producing around 6 million tons and Tata Steel around 2.5 million tons. There really wasn't, the big players were not there. Now, of course, you look at the scenario is totally changed. We have a large number of big players, 5 big major players have emerged. Jindal, the Ispat, all these people have now emerged. But at that stage, when we let loose, the amount of entrepreneurial talent that flowed out, daily people were ringing up because they didn't have to come to us. Tell me, where can I set up induction furnace? I want to set up electric arc furnace. Where can I? Who do I approach? And then the ministry started doing what it should be doing, promoting the industry. That's when we really started, examining the industry and promoting it. So I've seen that, and I've seen how things have moved the initial intrepidation, how actually sitting there also. But I had told the secretary, I just thought this is totally meaningless. 100 files I dispose per day, and I think I've done a great job. And at the end of the day, I think, what have I done? I might as well as pick up 50 files and say yes and no for all the effort, for all the effect it was producing on the industry. But when we really let go, the entrepreneurial talent flourished. It was unimaginable, and I saw that right from 92 to 95. Then unfortunately I had to leave. I left, of course, I went to Tamil Nadu and development question, larger issue. Then I came back, as I said, because this has always been my first love. And as joint secretary, I was doing something which really, interested me, and which was a part of what government should be doing, managing the external trade environment. I was deeply involved in, agreements to set up, there was an anti-subsidies agreement worldwide, because now here again, this is the power equations at play. The developed countries felt that, now in their time they've given huge subsidies, mind you. The US industry has been built on huge subsidies. But they felt that the market was being distorted due to subsidies being given by the developing countries. India, China, all the Russia and others. So they turned around and the OECD, they took up OECD as a platform. And they said, let's start talks for having an anti-subsidies agreement only for the steel industry. Now, those of you who are aware of the WTO regime, there is already an anti-subsidy agreement there, which is meant to cover all aid. But they said, no, that has not proved effective. So let's draw up a separate agreement which will curb, which will prevent countries from giving subsidies to their industry and so distorting the market. This is the market, and anybody is free to open up, set up in capacity, but let it all be market driven. In principle, that's fine. But our objection in India was, what do you mean? I mean, in your time, you've given huge subsidies, you set up your industry, and now when it's time for us to really take off, we haven't been able to meet our latent demand is so high. I'll come to that shortly. 30 kg per capita, which is the lowest in the world. China has 120 kg per capita. America has 400 kg per capita. Our production levels are 30 kg per capita. And the rural areas, you must have heard of it, at the bottom of the pyramid, look at the latent demand, 2 kg per capita. The demand hasn't been explored at all. It's around 60 kg in the urban areas, but the average comes to 30 kg. So the point was that here was the initiative, and sure enough, actually we took the lead. For 3 years, we haggled. We didn't want to show that we were against the thing. We went along. But at the end of it, you see, we put up conditions which were not acceptable to and the way the talks have failed now, those talks have also failed. Basically, they were against the BRIC countries, our countries, China and Brazil and others. We were not interested. Because Brazil, for instance, Brazil has their priorities very clear. They want to give specific subsidies to open up their weaker, their poorer areas. And they say the steel industry, the way you subsidize the industry, it has tremendous ripple effects. It becomes a center by which you generate a lot of economic activity. They want to also, reform their banks, the banks which give money to the steel industry. So they were very clear. On our part, India doesn't ostensibly now give any, we don't give subsidies to the steel industry as such, except for our general regime, as you know. We have backward areas. We have areas where, you have income tax, holidays. You have the excise holidays. Backward, at present, as you know, Uttaranchal, then I think Uttaranchal, then Chhattisgarh, and one more place, Sikkim. Uttaranchal, Sikkim, and HP. The income tax and excise holidays have been extended right up to 2010. It was read out in the paper, which we are opposing now. Because we are saying this is unfair to our industry. There will be a flight of industry from Goa. But nevertheless, but for the fact that we generally give subsidies to promote regional development, we do not give specific steel subsidies. So to that extent, we were not concerned. But we felt that under the guise of stopping that, they might turn around and put, constraints on the development of our industry. And our industry was very clear. They wanted no anti-subsidy agreement. So after 3 years of haggling, finally that initiative was also done. But what I'm trying to say is, the government was involved in doing what it should have been doing. That is promoting the industry. With these few remarks now, I think I'll come to my, I'll just run you through slides because I'd like to interact at the end of it. I'll just run you through what I've put together. Of course, it was put together in a hurry because based on what I have with me. Yeah. Okay, let's see. It's an overview of the industry. We are the 8th largest steel producer in the world. We've already told that, I've already told you. China is the largest, 320 billion tons. 320. We are producing around 40 billion tons finished steel. And the surprising thing is, let me tell you, they're adding capacity equivalent to what we're producing every year. Every year they're adding 30 billion tons capacity. It's unbelievable what's happening in China. And a lot of us, we said, this can't carry on. Won't they saturate, or won't their infrastructure get saturated? Nothing, they're continuing at it. And surprisingly, the economies are getting overheated. The inflation rates are under control. So they are producing at that rate. 8th largest steel producer in the world. Our finished steel production is 42.7 million tons. A growth of 11% over the previous year. We're growing at this rate of 9-11% per year. Apparent consumption of finished steel was 38 billion tons. The rest, as you know, is being exported. And flats. Flats, of course, are HR coils, CR coils, which go into cars and your white goods. The rest are longs. Longs are your TMTs and the doors and TMTs. We are the largest producer. This is very interesting. In the world, we produce the largest amount of sponge iron, 12.8 million tons, which means, as you know, sponge iron is reduced iron. This is a substitute for scrap. Scrap, unfortunately, in our country, for obvious reasons, we are a very conservative country. We reuse our steel. We don't generate an amount of scrap. And even now, countries abroad, due to environmental considerations, they're becoming more and more, energy efficient and more conservative. So the amount of scrap being generated in the world is reducing. So frankly, sponge iron is way out. And we have the advantage. We have the iron ore for sponge iron. 12.8 million tons, the largest in the whole world. Our exports are marginal, 4.4 million tons are our production. And exports 3.7. So virtually it's equal, even. I mean, we basically depend on the domestic market. Huge iron ore reserves, 23 billion tons, out of which only about 2.3 or 3 billion tons are the high-grade ore. The plus 64% Fe. You don't have high-grade here, by the way. This is low-grade. These people in Goa, when they export, they invariably take from Karnataka the high-grade ore and they blend, and then they export. That's what's acceptable to them. Private steel producers, you must have read that in the paper, everybody is opting for forward as well as backward integration. In particular, backward integration. You see, the name of the game these days is the person who has securitized his raw materials, he's comfortable. Raw materials have become extremely, iron ore, coal, I'll come to that later. But increasingly people are going not only for forward but backward integration also. The Indian steel producers are looking for overseas acquisitions in steel as well as raw materials. Of course, you know that the way LN Mittal and the others are producing. Tata Steel is also going now. Actually, LN Mittal has set in force, trends which now everybody is copying, even his other cousin brothers, the ones the Ispat, they're all his cousin brothers. They're also now, half the time, I remember this fellow, the other chap he rang the other day, he's only in London these days. He's scouting around for new acquisitions in steel. So that's a very interesting development. What is the role of the state now? As I said, I spoke to you about the time when we were pricing and distribution control, we had a stranglehold on steel. So in our steel, because I have also, in fact, I'll share with you, I come to 2005, the new steel policy, which we formulated and which was finalized in my time. We said, what is our role? And frankly, you ask me, these are the three areas that our role stops and finishes. We have to provide a policy framework for promoting and competitiveness. We have to facilitate and put in supply side constraints. And these are huge. I'm telling you, these are huge in terms of, access to, ore, getting all the infrastructure together, getting the leases out so that people get the leases, getting the environment clearances. These are huge problems. And of course, managing the external trade environment, which I just now spoke to you, the WTO regime, other things which impact our steel. That's our limited role which we have said the state has. The rest, it's all open. Capacity additions, anything, it's all there. The brief on the profile. Production, we have agreed, I've shown you. In last year, we had 42 million tons. And it's been growing at a rate of approximately 5 to 6% per year. Export 4, 3. Availability, Because a lot of this, if you want 38 million tons, a lot of it imports are project imports. This is not really available. These are all projectized imports. And consumption is around 38 million tons. Which of course is very, again, if you read the last line, 30 kg. So I just told you it's probably one of the lowest in the world. What are the projections? In the steel policy we have projected at going at an average rate of compound annual growth rate of about 7.3%. We've been slightly optimistic because till now we have grown at a rate between 6 to 7%. But in view of the fact that there's a lot more interest, we have projected that by 2019-20 that we will reach production levels of 110 million tons. Imports 6 million tons, go up from 2. Exports will go up. Increasingly, the export window, will increasingly open up because now we our producers are getting into really specialized high-end steels. Tata Steel has just now started producing a blue steel, which goes into car production, body of cars. Earlier we were importing all that, but we're going into really high-end steel. So exports is essentially around 25% we should be able to reach export level, and the consumption will be around 90 million tons. The annual, as I said, CAGR will vary between will be around 7.8%. This is what we projected in our steel policy. Domestic steel consumption, that of course, as you're aware, basically construction, housing, infrastructure, fabrication, railways, processing industries, pipes, tubes, automobiles, consumer durables. This is our domestic steel. We have ample market in the domestic sector. The second point which I want to stress is there are income elasticity of demand is one, in the sense that normally GDP grows with 1%, our steel consumption also grows with 1%. So it has kept pace with the GDP growth. In the global context, we just now heard, I told you also, that globally now over 1 billion tons of steel is being produced, 1,050, out of which our share is an abysmal 3.1%, very little. We're not a large player in the international market. We just produce 2.6. That was 2004. Now we're producing 40 million tons. Domestic standard, this is important. Our domestic market is the major focus for our steel producers. They are not dependent on the global. And that's why the developed world is very wary of this, and these people don't need us. Again, per capita consumption, we projected this, depending upon the fact that our production is going up. Consumption is going up, consumption will go up in the rural areas particularly. We expect that what is 30 kg now, by 11-12 will reach 48 kg, and so on, and right up to 175 kg. These are projections. But here again, let me tell you, what is the average consumption in the world? Today, its average consumption is 150 kg, something which we will reach only in 2030. And the developed countries are consuming at a rate of about 400 to 500 kg per capita. Historic trends, just to briefly tell you, 3 phases if you bring out. 49, we started off barely with 1 million tons, 1 or 2 million tons. And then with very slow growth to 73. Thereafter, there was modest growth. But here again, mind you, from 41 right up to 1991, where the break takes place, it was all controlled. It was a totally controlled regime. We had modest growth. And then see, once we had really opened up in 91, then there was a high growth rate, and we moved up from 16.2 to 41. We moved in how many years? I think in a little over a decade we moved up. So that shows how our production has grown. Again, this shows the finished steel consumption, as I said, a compound annual growth rate of 7% over the years. This is we are projected a little higher now. Let me now, a lot of you wonder, what is the distribution now? Mind you, even now, 68% of all steel produced in the country is in the private sector. It's only 32%. Public sector is Steel Authority of India, RANL, Rashtriya Ispat, and ISCO, which of course has now been taken over by SAIL. So public sector is not, a lot of people feel that the public sector is standalone, not at all. It's the private sector which is in command. Long and flats, the same. It's actually the share again in the private sector is higher, longs and flats. In fact, the private sector tends to concentrate on flats, HR coil, CR coil, because this is where the value addition really is. The longs, which are the construction sector, for the housing industry, That is not, but increasingly, I've been telling people that this is where the real spurt will take place in longs, because once rural demand picks up, then you watch what happens. Pricing. I just thought to give a slide on pricing, because there was a lot of confusion. They said government was told, why don't you control prices? In 04, 05, prices went to the roof. I'll show you. And there was a lot of demand from the people. You see, they were very clearly told, steel prices always follow cyclical pattern. If you look up the past. And secondly, they are determined by three things: local market conditions, global prices, and the cost of major raw materials. Nobody can really control steel prices. Artificially, we tried to control it. Again, it led to huge corruption that was starting on. Then, in a deregulated environment, the government does not directly intervene to influence prices. Yes, we can influence it through fiscal and other policy measures. I'll come to that. In order to bring down prices over 3 years, we brought down duty levels from 25 to 5%. We did that, but that's the only thing what we really can do. Just a slide to show you how prices have moved. The industry was in dumps, till about 04, 05, till about, I would say around till March 04. It was in a terrible shape. Prices were really down, 02, 207. Because HR coils, that is always the barometer of prices, that is the basic material. Now, $207 was really the bottom. And people weren't really making money. That's why people were losing, our producers. Look what happened. From 02 to 05, 171% change in prices. The prices shot to the roof. Demand peaked. And this is when a lot of our steel producers made a lot of money. And it's good for the industry because all those, and a lot of them were under that RBI had, they were under that, what do you call it, is the particular in which they were, all the loans that were being given, they have rescheduled it, but they have this particular name they call for it. I don't remember that.
Priority sector.
No. There was a regime they fixed it. But these, in a year, they've been able to repay all their loans. All of them are out of now, out of rent. And look at the tremendous rise. From 171% it went up. 1 year, 04, 05, the steel industry, including our mining industry, has made huge profits. After that, it is somewhat leveled out, $375. It's around now, it's a little more leveling. Of course, it's still around $300, HR coins. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to say is 04, 05 is huge. Another point I want to bring up in the slide is, just see our domestic prices. I tried to show FOB price and domestic. Our domestic prices are run in tandem with global prices, what I just said earlier. Just see, even our percentage change was 120%. Not as significant, but still. So our prices also run in tandem with the international prices. We are as much influenced by international factors as anything else. I just want to show you this to show you that our pricing is no different. Pardon?
This is domestic price.
Domestic price of HR coils. 15,500 in March, Mumbai, ex-Mumbai. And then it percentage change during June 2000 to 02. 02 it came down. As I said, it went into a period of slump. But thereafter, from 02 to 05, a 120% increase in prices, 34,150 domestic prices. What I'm trying to show in this slide is, we have moved in tandem with the global prices.
No, that's fine, sir. But you have taken only this Mumbai, or there are 4 major cities.
Yeah. But the reason we took Mumbai is because FOB, you can only compare FOB with X arrivals in Mumbai. Thereafter, you have to add the transportation costs. That would not be truly representative. But Mumbai being port-based, whatever comes in, thereafter transportation costs have to be added. That's the reason why Mumbai is always taken as whenever we compare FOB with our, we always compare to Mumbai. Again, look at the way in falling customs duties on non-alloy steel. In 92-93 it was 120%. And we have really brought it down systematically. In fact, 04, 05, just see there's a steep fall. Because there's a huge demand from customers. They said, what's happening? Why are the prices moving up so much? So we thought if we bring down duties, then if the imported steel becomes cheaper, then automatically it did have some effect. Not much though. Because globally there was a huge demand for steel. So it did have some effect. But the government is there. Now we are at WTO rates. Probably we are one of the few countries. 5% is the average. There are some items which are a little higher. Alloy steel is about 10%. But non-alloy steel, which are we call it carbon steel. That is which is used in the housing sector. That is only at 5%. So it's virtually it's a free market. You're free to import your steel if you like. There's no problem. So that way, and mind you, the producers not too happy with this. They have been tooth and nail resisting this because they want barriers. In order to increase their own realization, they want barriers. Your SRs and your Tatas and your steel lines, huge, we had to fight with them, but we didn't listen. We said, listen, the common man is important. You can't allow these barriers because prices were already ruling very high. 34,000, which is unbelievable, 34. Now 22,000 is the cost of HR coils. 35, they've taken it to 40,000 also. So they've been huge here. I'm just trying to show you. Now here, an overview. Which are the major players? Steel Authority, largest player, 9.15 million tons, 050. Tata Steel, 3.8. They have a major expansion plan. They're going to reach 6 million tons. SAIL is going to reach by 2020. They want to reach 20 million tons of crude steel, which translates to, in finished steel, which will translate to around 17, 18 million tons. RINL, 3 million tons. They want to expand to 10 million tons. SR 3.3, they also have huge expansion plan. They're putting up new blast furnaces. SPARC is also 2.6. EHW, I come to that. Total 42%. Now, this is significant. Others, what do I mean by others? 40%. What is others? This is the secondary sector. Primarily, this comprises of your induction furnace industry, small electric arc furnace industry, the re-rollers. What they do is, any ship, alarm you must have heard of, ships are broken, that steel is brought over and it's rolled, and that's finished steel. The steel is not being produced. They're not making new steel. It's recycling steel. But still it comes within production, 40%. Our primary production, as we call it, the primary producers, they produce 60%. Out of which the largest is Steel Authority. A small SWOT analysis will be done in the steel, I just thought I'd run you through this because this is a part of this is the way we work the policy. What are our strengths? Abundant resources of iron ore, 23 billion tons. We have low cost, efficient labor force. How long that lasts, I don't know. Strong managerial capability. Strongly globalized industry. We have modern plants, modernized old plants. A strong DRI production. This is actually one of our largest strengths. Our DRI production base is very strong. Korea and others are now getting into Malaysia because they find that scrap is increasingly becoming scarce all over the world. Unless you have DRI now will replace scrap, particularly electric arc furnace industry. All over the world, actually our country is slightly different. 60 to 70% of steel is produced electric arc furnace. But here, ours is so expensive, it's not economical. It's more economical to go through the blast furnace route, in which you require basically iron ore, coking coal to reduce the iron, and then of course small quantities of alum and other additions are there. But our increasingly in the future, DRI will be substituting the scrap. DRI is important also in the induction electric arc furnace and regionally dispersed merchant ore. These are our strengths. Our weaknesses, again, high cost of energy, higher duties and taxes. Our infrastructure is poor. We are addressing that. I'll come to that. Quality of coking coal, not too good. In fact, we have very little coking coal reserves in India. Let me share with you. Coking coal is virtually zero. And it's not as if it's not there. But the largest seam of coking coal, 2 billion tons, are you aware, is in Dhanbad. And it's Jharia coalfield. And it's under the place 75,000 people are staying on top. And imagine the whole country can't do a thing. Nobody allows us to move those 35,000. 2 billion tons of steel is coking coal going below. What do? In China, overnight, they would have been moved. So that's the difference. They would just relocated them. Here, you have tens of politicians. No politician will let you touch those people. So that's the problem. So with coking coal, we have to necessarily import. Then labor laws. As you know, restrictive labor laws, something which the PM wants to address. Dependence on imports for steel manufacturing equipment and technology. And slow statutory clearances for development mining. This is a huge problem. This is something which, when the PM was in charge of mines department, he tried to open up a lot, but there are a lot of problems here, particularly environment-related problems. Our opportunities, huge infrastructure demand, rapid urbanization, increasing demand for consumer durables, untapped rural demand, something I spoke about, and increasing interest of foreign steel producers in India. That all of you are aware. They're coming up, POSCO, and now you have Ellen Mittal also now. Threats, slow growth in infrastructure development, because this is really going to slow down things. Market fluctuations and China export. If China, you see the problem, and that's why it reached 320 million tons. Tomorrow, suppose they become saturated, the infrastructure China, all that steel they'll have dumped somewhere. It'll all get dumped here, in places like India. Our prices will crash. Even though there are anti-dumping laws, it takes time to respond now. The big threat there is, if China, once China gets saturated, their own infrastructure, they'll have to find an outlet for their steel. And it's going to basically come to India. And global economic slowdown, which of course is. Now, I'll just talk briefly about the steel policy, because this shows the direction we're taking. 2005, it's been accepted, the cabinet has approved it, and it's now being implemented. What's the objective? We want a modern, efficient steel industry of world standards, catering to diversified steel. That's the only objective, frankly, which we have in mind. We want to achieve global competitiveness in cost, quality, productivity. This is something private sector will do on their own. We have to only support them, because they won't survive unless they're globally competitive. Barriers are down, it's zero level barrier. They won't survive. And we feel, somebody can turn around and say, why have you fixed a target? We said at least there should be a target. But frankly, I suspect, and I keep telling people, will exceed it. I'll tell you for reasons why it will exceed this. 110 million tons by 2019. Our strategy on the demand side, we said we must strengthen the delivery chain in terms of promoting more industry, more producers. Let's strengthen that. Let's give them all possible help. The interface between producers and designers of steel-intensive products. The marketing part, hasn't been sufficiently addressed. In fact, we set up an institute for this purpose. It's called the Indian Institute of Steel Development and Growth. Institute of Steel Development and Growth, Calcutta based. It's all private driven, private industry driven. We're supporting it through grants. They are getting into all this, steel intensive. They've done a lot of steel intensive designs. You must have seen abroad when you go to airports. It's all steel. Why can't we have beautiful airports like the Paris airport or the. So now it's being done. Some of the new equipment will come up with beyond steel. And fabricators. We haven't developed fabricators. We're trying to develop fabricators now, particularly stainless steel fabricators and ultimate users. Then creating awareness about cost-effective and technically efficient end-use steel. There's very little awareness. In the long run, steel is cost-effective because there's less maintenance. It's ecologically better. You can always recycle it. You pick it up, remelt it, and again use it. So we haven't created sufficient awareness. On the supply side, and this is very important. In fact, there are more problems on the supply side. We have to enhance and improve the access to critical inputs like iron ore, coking coal. We have to expand our infrastructure, which is self-evident. We have to have a well-developed financial market and increase focus on R&D. Actually, this is an area where the ministry has taken a lot of effort. We have set up a virtual R&D center. Virtual, I call it, because there's no brick and mortar building. You have scientists together, and on the, they are promoting through the internet itself, they're getting in touch with scientists, parceling out projects. We have funds under the Steel Development Fund, and increasingly giving more and more funds to private players for R&D, training of manpower and integrated information service. Issues of concern are three only, as I said: basic quality infrastructure, adequate and timely supply of critical raw materials, and adequate resources, financial income. These are the major issues. If we can tackle these issues, most of our problem is over. A brief on the Indian economy. This is a part of steel policy. We said GDP has been growing at 7.45% for 4 consecutive years. It will continue. Other key indicators are exports across 100 billion marks. Import of capital goods is increasing. We have moderate inflation rate. Stable rupee. At present things are extremely rosy. There's a stable rupee. There's a growing corporate sector profits. Growing forex reserves. $160 billion US dollars we've touched on. And business confidence is an all-time high. There is furthermore huge demand potential over 1 billion population. A booming middle class. 100 billion have over earning of more than $3,000 per annum. Consumerism. All these are factors. Housing demand boom. All these are factors which are going to boost the demand for steel. Look at the specific factors which are going to boom, which are going to boom the demand, steel demand. Construction, manufacturing, capital goods, and the consumer durable sector. All of these are really booming over the years, particularly after 2003-2004. They're all at an all-time high and they're going up. The automobile sector, look at the annual growth rate. I mean, it's almost 14 to 16% every year. Commercial vehicles, multi-utility vehicles, these people are all going to be steel. So it's good for the industry. At a 25% annual growth rate, we require 15 to 20 million tons of steel by the auto sector alone. This is how we've come to this, this figure of 110 million tons. Infrastructure, roads, the total road length, 3.32 million kilometers, highways, national highways. You have, the golden quadrilateral which is being planned, 80,300 kilometers. We've already completed 6,000 kilometers and now we're going to further take up 12,000 kilometers. 4-laning and 6-laning going on. So there's a huge demand in the whole sector. Housing sector, this is significant. You see, 75 million additional dwelling units we estimated will be required by 2010. And this is going to, and 125 million by 2020. So as I said, the longs, in fact more and more now, these major players like Tata's and your Jindal and Spark, and they are all, the new capacities are coming in the longs because they've understood that this is where the future demand is. It's the housing sector which is going to come up. Ports and airports, of course, I think all of you are aware, I briefly outlined, port capacity increasing by 400 million tons per annum. Capacity like where in the near future 100 million tons and approximate investment of $1.75 billion. Airports also, we've spoken about that. Modernization of Delhi and Mumbai, they've estimated investment of $3.1 billion. And 10 new non-metro airports are coming up. In fact, ISDAC has been instrumental. The Civil Aviation Ministry has agreed that the non-metro airports will be largely steel airports. And of course, power sector. Here again, a huge demand for steel. We expect that we'll add 67,000 megawatts in the next 5-year plan. It was 11 5 years. And that's going to need a lot of steel. Railways, I think I briefly mentioned that, 63,000 kilometers of track length, perfection, track length, and then northeast, northwest corridors are coming up. Growth plans include additional wagons and passenger coaches. There's a huge opportunity for increasing steel consumption. So what are our broad strategies for fueling demand, which we feel the government can help? One is, the most important, we have to facilitate rural consumption. Rural consumption awareness, unless awareness is there, that if you're spending a little more money on steel, like for instance, these CAG sheets, these corrugated sheets, definitely they're far more lasting than your other normal sheets. So the problem is, people say it's too expensive. So unless we, we'll have to put in place systems by which not only awareness increases, but we have to induce, more and more rural consumption, because that's the way, the long run it will be better for the consumers. Then increased usage in bridges, crash barriers, flyover, building construction. In fact, ISDAC has brought up in Calcutta a flyover, the Oriya flyover, came up exactly in 8 months. It's all steel. Just 8 months to put a flyover. And this is what we're doing. We're building, we are instituting designs for bridges, flyovers, etc. Then closer interaction between ISDAC, producers, architects. You see, the engineering colleges, unfortunately, steel is no longer, the usage of steel is no longer taught in engineering colleges. We want to bring that into the syllabus so that increasingly our architects, engineers, and students understand the advantages of using steel. 300, now there's going to be a huge, even the railways, they have realized from a level of 35, 37 now, 110, 75 million tons, it means 300 million tons of additional traffic. The railways are going to increase their carrying capacity because they see a huge opportunity here. 300 million tons, and we've agreed that in steel industry says we will help you. We will help you in a public-private partnership. New railway infrastructure, new railway lines will help you because they know that they're going to need much more railway infrastructure for moving steel around. Steel is not easy to move, in the sense that it's a tough material, so you need the railways is important. And then, then this is a slide slide just to show you where the capacities are coming up. New capacities, Essentially, it's these eastern states, because this is where the raw material is. It's Jharkhand, 34 million tons per annum. These are all the MOUs which have been entered into. West Bengal, 4 million tons. Chhattisgarh, 9. Orissa, 38. Major players are Orissa and Jharkhand, you must have noticed. Even Ellen Mitchell is playing one against the other. And Andhra Pradesh, 3.3. And Karnataka, 9.7. Because this is essentially, people want to be close to the raw materials. And the major players here again, SAIL, Tata Steel, RINL. Now, these are the new players who have emerged. This is interesting. These are new players. Bhushan is a new player. Sterlite is a new player. Nickel, Moscow, of course, But the others have been around. Ispat, JSP, LSR, they've been around. So these new players are coming and they have really grown big now. They're also in the 3 million ton bracket. Just a brief slide to show you our estimates. 48, Chhattisgarh has signed 48 MOUs with the company for 16 million tons. Jharkhand, 22 million tons, 37 MOUs. And look at the order of investment. Karnataka, 54 MOUs, 14.36 million tons. Orissa, 37 MOUs. Now, even if half these MOUs, finally mature into actual plants, huge capacity, SAIL 23 million tons, Tata 3 million tons, additional. Now, just see, if the MOU signed total of 110 million tons, not all that is going to happen, in the sense that, but what we say is that even if at a conservative level, even if half of these finally result in capacities coming up, you will have 50 to 60 million tons, so we should reach our capacity of 110 million tons. If all these mature, you will reach 182 million tons, much above what we've estimated, but they won't all mature. It's not easy. I mean, the MOU is fine, but now this is an interesting slide. Our changing demographic profile. You must have read this, seen this. How the bulge at the middling level is increasing from 2000 to 2020. We are increasingly a young population, and that has huge implications for our industry and for our economy. What does it imply for India's steel situation? A young population, declining dependency ratio. By 2010, there are going to be 125 million consuming affluent households. Urban disposable incomes will go up. This is likely to fuel significant demand in automobiles and housing and a surge in steel. What was earlier considered as our largest drawback has become our largest plus. As you know, China now is doing the fact that they had a one-child policy. They find that they're going to be left behind in the future. Rural infrastructure, of course, as you know, Bharat Nirman program has been started. That's going to kick-start it. There's a commitment of 1,74,000 crores. And these envisage 1,46,000 road land. These are mostly rural areas, mind. This Bharat Nirman is the single largest, program which is going to have an impact on the steel industry. They're going to other roads also through various routes, 48,000 crores. Now, under current elasticity estimates, increase of 10 to 12% per annum is expected in the consumption of steel by the infrastructure sector. Overall demand for steel by 2020 in the construction sector alone would be 65 to 85 million tons. As I told you, you see construction sector is going to have a huge boom. Then one slide I picked up on the BRIC countries, how our projected GDP is increasing. And Brazil, China, and of course, if you compare it to the developed countries, probably UK is the only one we're going to match. The others are far ahead. But nevertheless, in terms of even within our the BRIC countries itself, leaving aside China, we are the second largest player. And this, see, so the changing demographic profile, the steady GDP growth and investment infrastructure will make a huge impact on demand for steel. And I frankly expect it to reach 125 million tons.
This is in which unit?
This is in crores, no?
Crore
No,
means
it's-
development is.
I think it's this way. See, this is must be thousands of crores. I don't know the unit now. I remember.
Because it can't be crore.
It can't be crore. It's not crores. I don't know. You're right. It's probably in terms of 1,000 crores, no?
Billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars. Could be. Yeah, could be probably billion of dollars.
Billions.
Billion dollars. Okay. You're right. I don't know whether I picked it up. And how do we meet this? I just brought this slide to show you that tomorrow somebody will say, why are you concentrating on steel production within the country? Why not import all this? For one, this cost differential to switch from domestic supply to imports is of 35%. It's going to be much more expensive to import steel. The cost of steel production in developing countries is much lower. So developed countries will be, the cost is much higher. And we will find it cost competitive to meet domestic demand through creation of domestic capacity rather than through imports. Unless, of course, the prices of imported steel are distorted. As I said, if China comes in and starts dumping steel, that's a different matter. But otherwise, it's more cost effective to produce within the country. Now, a few slides on our, the critical raw material constraints. This is important. If you see, this diagram shows you. Series 1 is our per capita iron ore reserves in terms of tons. For 5 countries, the largest, and the series 2, which is the blue one, is the steel consumption, per capita. So if you see, both in steel consumption we are the lowest. And even in terms of our per capita iron ore, they're not very high. Even though the absolute figure is large, per capita we are still much below. Australia and Brazil are the two largest players. Our per capita iron reserves is 10 tons against 120 tons for Brazil and 900 tons for Australia. Our iron ore exports have doubled in 2004, mainly high grade antimony. In fact, as you know, there's a big battle raging in the center now. This is the Anwar Committee, which went into the entire mineral policy, have recommended that iron ore, including other scarce minerals, they say that you can continue to export also, but export should come down over time because domestic demand is increasing. Our main domestic producers are saying, why are you allowing, you should totally ban iron ore exports? Because let's do value addition within the country. And secondly, our reserves are limited. So they want an immediate moratorium or a ban on all iron ore exports. But as you know, it's a huge industry in India and it's difficult. But the fact is that our players are drumming up a lot of support. Your Tata, Steel, and all those, saying that we need our own ore and therefore let's stop it totally. The Koda committee has taken a balance view. They said over time, as our own capacities pick up, then yes, by all means. Presently, we are producing around 120 million tons of iron, out of which we are using only 60 million tons for our capacity in steel production. So what we do the rest? We have to export it. But they are saying that since our high grade reserves are limited, and they are saying that at this level, India's entire known reserves will be exhausted in less than 20 years. That's what they are saying. But then these are known reserves. We expect that during prospecting and further, more and more will come to the fore. But nevertheless, there's a big debate on what should we do with exports. Chrome ore also, we are not in a happy state at all. We have less than 1% known reserves, share of global exports, but our share global is 35%. And unless additional reserves are discovered, our existing reserve will not last beyond 20 years. And chrome is required particularly for the alloy and stainless steel. This is important. Coking coal, this is the most important raw material. We currently import around 19 million tons. We get 7.5 million tons from indigenous sources annually. There are sources within. But by 2020, we will need 70 million tons of coking coal for producing 110 million tons of steel. And 85% of this will have to be imported. So we are heavily dependent on imports. How will the industry survive? So how has the industry reacted? This is a temporary shut. This is how the industry has reacted. We are trying to, in fact our private players have already started drying up or tying up with Australian mines, wherever coal is available. And we could also leverage FTA negotiations. But the fact is that securitizing coal supply is very important, and the industry knows it. Industry is going up. Tata Steel has already picked up a couple of mines. In private industry is picking up. This is where the public sector, unfortunately cannot respond. SAIL has still to pick up a mine, whereas all its competitors have already picked up mines. This is the basic difference between the public and private sector. Public sector just doesn't have the wherewithal to respond to crisis. But the fact is that we will face a huge problem here. This will be one of the main constraining factors in development of our steel industry. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, that comes to the end of my slide. I think what I try to show, through this it's a basic panoramic view of where the industry is going. Let me once again share with you. Fact is that, in the horizon, while there's a lot of talk about, more and more production, the raw material situation is crucial. And unless the raw material situation, particularly the coal side, is tackled, it's going to be difficult for our players. They know it also. Iron ore reserves, I am fairly optimistic. I feel that we have adequate reserves. It's a question of prospecting and seeing and bringing out those reserves which are available. More and more are being added every year. So I don't think iron ore is going to be such a big constraining factor. And that's the main reason why you have these big players coming here. They're all trying to securitize iron ore. And Ellen Mittal and whether it's POSCOs, their first and foremost condition is allotment of mines, leases. Without that, they're not going to do anything at all. So that is the important point. It's all a run on iron ore mines. This big, tamasha that's going on is all people jockeying for position to get hold of iron ore mines. Because this will increasingly determine who becomes a competitive player in the future. You cannot be competitive on the basis of imports of iron ore. It's going to be difficult. Can be done. Technology presently is such, there are technological advances of course, but technology is such that the blast furnace route is the proven and most competitive. A lot of people are talking about, other technologies such as melt and using iron ore directly from fines, iron ore fines making steel. There's a lot of talk about it. Nothing is proven as yet. And as far as cost competitiveness is concerned, the blast furnace route has been proven to be the best. And increasingly the new players who are coming in are only putting up blast furnaces. That's all. Nobody is thinking of any other. Electric arc furnaces also not being put up. So I think the steel industry in India has a rosy future. The major constraint of the raw materials is there. On the demand side, I think demand side we have to do much more in terms of sensitizing the people, in terms of awakening latent demand. There's a huge latent demand in rural areas, particularly, and I think it can be tapped. Question of tapping that demand, and definitely we'll be able to. We need not depend on exports. Our domestic market is large enough to take care of our entire requirement. I think with that I will come to a close, and I'll be happy to take questions from the floor. Okay.
You mentioned that cost of production in advanced countries is more than
It is, yes.
But in that case, why is Mr. Mittal acquiring more plants in advanced countries?
In advanced countries, what he does is, I'll tell you the Mittal plan, what he does, because I've studied what he does. He picks up plants at rock bottom prices. When the plants are down, if you must have noticed, Romania, Croatia, he picked up plants at absolutely rock bottom prices. They were virtually, they were sick. So number one, he picks up those plants, he pays very little. Secondly, top management. He fires all the top managers. He brings it from steel authority. SAIL is the largest supplier of presently of manpower all over the world. I tell you, I have been director of SAIL. Their managers are top class. They have been recruited through, they recruited young engineers, they rise through the organization. And they have been able to make production, to produce steel under so many constraints. Our SAIL managers are the best in the world. Ellen Mittal picks them up, offers them 3 times the salary. People are leaving. SAIL has a huge exodus taking place. And he places these top people in these plants. And that's what he does. He doesn't touch the workers so much. But these people who have produced, even now POSCO, Dr. Sanat Mishra, the one he is MD, and he's a top SAIL manager. He just picked even the MD of the Rokela plant. He took him over at 3 times his salary. And he is now heading their POSCO, the Ellen Mittal has taken him. So basically that's his game. And that's the same, everybody does the same game. You pick up plant cheap, you scout around for a good deal, right? And it's plant which is in the dumps. And you pick them up cheap, you change a little bit of tinkering here and there, little bit of balancing facilities he adds, minimum capital investment, and it turns around. Of course, he has the support of the political support is there. He's so big now, he can, for instance, I remember the Prime Minister of Romania doesn't go anywhere without Mittal, who is big by his side. He works at that level. He's able to change, influence their policies also. Now he's become very big. But initially he picked up Indonesia, he picked up a small plant, which is the dumps. Croatia, he picked up a plant. Romania, he picked up a plant. But he's got his gift, he's turning around plants. Yes.
There's a recent news Tata is paying the
that's right. That's right. That's right. Because after the Arcelor experience,
In the Indian context, what do you think is a good size of a plant?
See,
of the whole deal?
I'll tell you. Economically, I mean, it's been proven. 2.5 million tons, the blast furnace route. If you want to, economically, that's a cut-off stage. You must have a 2.5 million ton capacity. That is the way. Below that, it doesn't. It's not in the long run. It's not feasible. You can add, of course, to that, but nothing below 2.5 million. So that they say is a typical, is the ideal design of a.
But what was Mr. Mittal looking at? Supposing he were to take over Tata, so what's the exact benefit he's going to
Well, he got. I mean, fact is that he's Tata Steel price. I mean, the shares are up, but in any case, he probably is going to play the market also. But he has a top class facility. He'll be picking up one of the most efficient plants in India. Tata Steel, you see, unlike SAIL, Tata Steel has been constantly revamping and upgrading their plants. SAIL has not been doing it. For obviously, the public sector just doesn't know how to respond. Public sector has been flogging the same old plants here. They haven't been, with the result that their capacities have remained stagnant. ISCO, why did ISCO go into the dumps? Because there was no attempt to upgrade the plant. Tata Steel, because I've seen the Tata plant, they systematically upgrade. Systematically. They use the latest technology. They ensure that they remain at their competitive edge, the really competitive edge. I think he's looking at a good, Tata Steel is a prime example of the best running plant in India. He wants to make a statement now. I'm taking over the best run plant in India. So I'm coming in with a bang. And it's easier. Take over an existing plant. Why greenfield is difficult? It's not easy greenfield. That's why even POSCO is running into problem. Yeah.
Sir, don't you think that? Yes. Don't you think that rather than like our steel export of this iron ore, as such will go up as per your analysis, because the cost of production of the cooking gas, there is a constant raw materials. So because of that, our iron ore as such will be export will be growing in future, and import of this finished steel, it will be there from other countries to our country. So because the reason is that, as you have mentioned, that slow down in the world growth.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one point. Second thing is that our domestic consumption will be higher.
Yeah.
Okay, as per your statistics.
Yeah.
So if that is so, and all the world players, they will now dump in India this finished product because they are having advantage of coke and other cooking gas. So they will dump at a cheaper price in India, and it will produce in the domestic market. Definitely, cost of production will be higher.
You see, there are two things.
So don't you think that this is a threat?
Yeah, it's a big threat. You see, the point is, of course, see, again, let me put it in perspective. Now, we have the WTO anti-dumping laws are very strong. But the problem is reaction time. They want you to, a lot of host of data. When a private producer, suppose Chinese company dumping in India, then the producers here have to do a lot of research. They have to find out what is the cost of their production there, whether the price here is less than the cost of production. There's a lot of documentation to be done. Our producers were saying it takes them 9 months to do that. By that time, he's already dumped. He's already dumped huge quantities of steel.
Because that's what I'm just saying, sir. Suddenly this iron ore price has jumped because China has taken for Olympic some it is in your future. And after that saturation has started, and everybody started purchasing crops because it is a huge amount of profit that time. So suddenly after that, when saturation started, now it is very poor. Now it is the normal, million prices come down very less. So that's why I'm telling, because POSCO is again is coming to Orissa. What's the reason? Reason is that they send this iron ore from here to its company and finish there itself and sell it to
Yeah, it's a swap deal. No, mind you, that is, as you know, you must have, if you follow, anybody who followed that, there was a huge debate on this. It's a swap deal. 30% of their ore, they say they will export from here, and for blending purposes, they bring in a corresponding quantity from Korea. Now, it's a swap deal. But in the process, so they were effectively there is no effective outgo of ore. See, there is no effective outgo, but yes, they are taking our good quality ore out because that's plus 64% Fe. They'll probably bring in lower qualities for blending purposes. To that extent, their plant will benefit there, I agree. But in terms of quantities, there is no effective export in that sense. So that is what the final deal has been. That 30% of your ore requirement, you can export from here and bring in, but you have to bring in an equivalent quantity of ore from Korea, from wherever else. But the point you rightly said, and I also said initially, that is what our main Steel Alliance is saying. They are saying you're being very short-sighted. You must clamp down on iron ore exports now, because if you don't, he says we require all this ore. You know, they say that this is not an argument. They say that you're producing more than your requirement initially, because now recently you must have shown 04, 05 onwards. Before that, we used to have huge mounds of fines all over. They were environmental hazard. These were liquidated overnight. People have thrown dirt literally in China, and China has picked it up because they're huge. It's in a huge demand for iron ore. 300 million tons. 1.6 for every ton of steel you produce, you require 1.6 million tons of iron ore. So there's a huge demand which has been generated, and surprisingly, they have their own reserves. They encourage their companies to import iron ore. So this is all very much there. But our mining industry says that till our industry here is in a position to absorb whatever we produce, we should be allowed to export the balance. So the ODA committee has taken this view that let the exports continue till our domestic production capacity increases to a point it can pick up the entire production of iron.
Even if already you have mentioned about this like subsidy issue at USA.
Yeah.
How they are subsidizing their companies like in providing the steel at the price as such they can sell it at a very low rate.
They have what is
that debate steel.
they have what is a very interesting, they call it a pension fund. You know what they do? The companies don't put their money into their own workers' pension fund. Huge liabilities, millions of dollars collected. Then one fine day the government picks up the entire liability. You know, so you're subsidizing the producer. They're doing it. Huge pension liabilities are being subsidized by the US government. So we objected to that. We said they said no, it's not a subsidy. We do it across the board. You see, to be a steel specific subsidy, it's only for one industry. They said we do it for all our industry, not only steel. But we said it's affecting the steel industry. So there are subsidies which are being given even by developed countries. All that has to be picked up.
So my question is in terms of production of steel in India. You see that public sector units like SAIL and all are producing significant amount of steel.
Yeah.
But being a public sector, I would like to ask you how efficient these units are and what is government planning to do to make it efficient?
In terms of efficiency, all the parameters, there's a lot of emphasis on efficiency, on improving productivity. At every level, there's a lot of emphasis. I agree with you. But as I said, there are certain inherent constraints still in the public sector. The public sector is under the regime where it's open to CAG scrutiny, to CBI, CBC, all sorts of scrutiny. Decision making is very slow, very, very slow. They're not commercial minded. For instance, they've not been able to pick up a mine till now, a coking coal mine, whereas other private players, because there you have to go, you have to send a committee there, and they should on the spot decide. In our regime, nobody is prepared to take that sort of a decision. Because tomorrow CAG will ask, did you throw over tender? Did you find the lowest? It's very difficult. These are commercial decisions that will be taken on the spot. So per se, the public sector, we're trying to, of course, we've been trying, the cabinet has said we give them more powers. There's a lot of devolution taking place. But I think inherently, the public sector is not designed to respond to commercial changes in the market. It cannot. Unless, therefore, I am particularly of the opinion, no matter what you do, it's very difficult.
In the future,
It's very difficult, and that's why you find, thank goodness, only 30% of the production is in the public sector. 68% is in the private sector. That's why the industry is growing. The public sector has not been able to grow. And another reason why you must have heard of mines in Jharkhand, ISCO, those Chiria mines. SAIL has been sitting on them for 25 years. They haven't developed them. And the best quality of iron ore in the whole world is there in Chiria. And that's Ellen Mittal is buying that. Ellen Mittal says, give me that. And you watch what wonders I do. This is what's happening. Public sector has not been able to. I was on the board and I know their problems. They just can't do it. They say, so what do we do? Even if a committee of 3 go tomorrow, okay, something paisa khali. You know, that's the problem. It's a very difficult responding in the public sector. So when Tata Steel goes to the spot and on the spot they negotiate and they pick up something. We can't do it. Anyway, there are problems. Yes.
You see that the automobile sector is experimenting a lot with aluminum as a substitute for steel in its cars and trucks, vehicles. So do you see any foreseeable threat of aluminum to the steel industry?
No, I don't. Right. I don't. Because you see, I know a lot of things have been said about that. But I tell you, aluminium, how much? Tell me, do you have figures? How much has aluminium really been able to replace? They've replaced only some components. The broad structure will remain. The largest amount of steel is required in the car body. That cannot be replaced. I don't see how you can do that. I mean, the speed we're talking about, the efficiency we're talking about, I don't see that happening. Yes, some components, yes, could be replaced. But there again, the replacement is the other direction. It's high alloy steel which is going into components. Because you want, increasingly people want more durability and more life. I don't see that happening, frankly. That is not the threat was in the can industry they've taken over. Aluminium has taken over the can industry. But I'm surprised, you'll be surprised, I went to Germany, there's an institute there, I think it's in Munich or somewhere. Huge campaign they started about the advantages of using steel. They've reoccupied 70% of the market. 70% of the German market has gone back to steel aluminium, those tin plate cans. So it's a question of marketing, it's a question of selling yourself.
One side we want to increase the consumption in the rural area, but if you now see the major multi-malls and things like that, except in the construction of base steel, all things which are originally steel, like window frames, everything is going aluminum. So we are losing out a market which was very clearly available. First that has to be stabilized. Before we really try to
actually the problem is the cost factor. You see, the initial cost is high. How do you get over that? The initial cost of steel, stainless steel is high. But what we've not been able to sell is the fact the life cycle cost. Look at the life cycle cost of a material.
The mindset of architects have to be changed. Otherwise, they will definitely.
We're trying to do that. We have instituted a new syllabi. We're trying to bring new syllabi in engineering colleges. So the students see this is a lovely steel intensive design. Stay cable, we can go up with next stay cable bridge is going to be all steel across the Zuari River. We're planning a total stay cable, a steel stay bridge on the Zuari. I'm there, I'll see that it comes up. Because I'm convinced that this is the long term we must go. Yes, please.
Adding on from that question, there are substitutes like advanced composites and all, whose strength to weight ratio is quite better than steel. They are increasingly being used in mass transit units like DMRC and various other metro rail units. So, with the growth of these
metro, the body is steel, stainless steel,
but the slides and all, telemetro, it is using advanced composites and all.
Okay.
And various in Indian railways also, various compartments and all, they are using advanced composites because it is
majority is still stainless steel.
Yeah, majority is steel, but they are increasingly using.
See, that will always be there. But you see, look at the cost factor also. Advanced composites, cost will be higher, and you'll have to balance the overall cost and the longevity. I think there are a lot of things which will go into it. Of course, this effort will continue. I'm not saying steel is under threat, but I think it's a basic. I mean, as a material, intermediate raw material in the construction industry to remain. It's preeminent. Preeminent space will not be taken in the near future. I mean, in the foreseeable future. I don't see it happening. Please, yes.
If you see the data of steel price dipped by 50% from January 2000 to 2002.
171%.
Yeah, and there is a 3% rise in the steel price of that. What could be the origin of this
Well, suddenly, as I said, the world demand increased tremendous boom. China driven. All China. People now saying China is the new god. The steel industry has been praising China because China, it's all China driven. The entire demand is China driven. China has saved the industry. All these people accepted. If China weren't there, they would have all been out in the dumps and bankrupt. China has saved the industry. I would say essentially China driven. There's no doubt.
What will the contingency plan if I say this year ends? It will happen at 3 years, 1 year down the line. China will start helping all those things. That's sure.
That's the problem.
We know that it takes 8-9 months to come with that.
See, the Olympics, Chinese Olympics are when? 2008. So people are comfortable to 2008. Then, huge demand for steel. A lot of infrastructure being built. Then I know for sure, I went to Shenzhen also. There's a triple gorge project, huge. Three rivers there, a lot of steel is required. Then if you go, I went to Shenzhen, huge development taking place, small multi-story buildings coming up. You drive along, it's unbelievable. And this is only the hinterland. they're going to go into the interior. They say, because I met the Chinese delegation, they say we are confident. We know that our requirement for steel and the requirement for upgrading infrastructure will continue for a lot more time. They're adding, can you imagine, over the last 4 years, every year they've added 30 million tons to their capacity. How are they doing it? I'm also wondering how are they doing it?
The projects are much bigger in the Olympics.
Yeah.
These other projects you mentioned,
much
bigger than the
much bigger. This Tri-Gorge project is a huge project. 3 rivers are being added. Are being joined together. So I think, no, China is confident because I met, I had this advantage. You get this world view. The Chinese delegation led by somebody really high up in China. We met them in France, OECD. I should go every 2 months. I should tell her, I said, I don't understand. How are you people doing it? She said, no. This thing you don't realize. Our demand is huge. We've just touched the interland. Let us move in. Once we move in, we're going to need much more. And she said, the people are demanding more. You see, you raise the aspirations of the people. The people there, once they see Shanghai and whatnot, they said, we also want our people. We want another Shanghai here. Huge demand increasing. People are, but I tell you something. They are following a Brazil. I went, interesting, I'll share with you. I went to Shenzhen. There was a conference, a steel conference. And we went to this hotel. And the minute I reached the hotel, I was just talking about the hotel with the manager. He said, we have 5 golf courses. I said, what? He said, there are 5 golf courses around the hotel. One hotel. I couldn't understand. I said, what is this? He said, how the villagers accepted these golf courses. There are 300 girls now acting as caddies. And each girl earns up to $100 per day. So the villagers, imagine every girl is bringing over $100 to her home. Her parents say, put up more golf courses. Look at the economy. $100 because caddy, and the foreigners are paying like $100 each girl carries home every day. My parents say there's nothing like it. They have this sort of money has never been seen. So this is the way. They have understood now. If their appetites have been opened, they are not going to stop now. It's going to carry on like that.
Regarding the project of RST, I think that is a cap on FDI, right? FDI in India. So I think that wouldn't be enough to.
No, it's 100%. It's 100% open. FDI, how you can bring in 100%. The steel industry has been totally thrown open. There is no bar. There is no FDI cap. There is nothing. There is no cap at all. You can bring in an amount of.
They have a retail.
Not on industry. Not on industry. There is no cap. 100% open FDI. Yeah. Any other cap, please?
Is there a constraint on availability of water in steel plants? Is that one issue, and is the government?
Yeah, you require water. That's why you find most of a lot of now new plants are coming shore-based plants. So there are a lot of more shore-based plants. Water is required. I don't know if you've been to a steel plant. They have a huge lake. Water is an important issue.